Top of the morning, Dan and Amy. Dr. Tony Fauci on MSNBC being questioned by Mehdi Hassan about the travel bans instituted by the Biden administration on South Africa and 8 other African nations. Racist? When Trump did it, it was racist. What about when Biden does it?
A lot of people are upset that flights from South Africa have been banned. They're pointing out that we're not banning flights from the UK, which now has the variant, from Belgium. Canada's got 2 cases. A lot of critics are saying when you ban flights from an African country, which did a lot of good work, as you yourself pointed out a moment ago, identifying this variant, you ban it from a black majority African country, but not white majority European countries. That looks racist to a lot of people. What do you say to that criticism?
No, it isn't racist. It was trying to figure out and giving us more time, at least a few weeks, to figure out what's going on here, because at the time that the Africans, and you're right, they were very good about giving us the information, we really didn't have any idea what we were dealing with here, and because of that, it was necessary to do something. I hope that this ban does not last very long at all, that we get this sorted out, we know a lot more what we're dealing with, and we can move on and get back to some sort of a normal interaction between countries. I understand.
But you understand why a lot of South African, but you understand why a lot of South African government officials, scientists feel like they're being punished for being good at their job.
Yes.
So Tony Fauci was opposed to travel bans before he was for them, which speaks to the fact that he, I think, I don't know if it's a fact, but I would argue that he's nothing more than a partisan hack. He opposed Trump administration policies. He flacks for Biden administration policies, even when they're ostensibly the same policy.
And he solidified that this was political over the weekend when he talked to Channel or CBS and was talking about Ted Cruz. We'll ask Ted Cruz what he was doing on January 6th.
Right. What does that have to do with COVID?
It's nothing to do with COVID.
Precisely right. And so one wonders if Trump in a private moment would say the biggest mistake he made in his final year in office was keeping Tony Fauci around. Mm-hmm. For more on that topic, we're pleased to be joined by his chief of staff for that final year in office, former North Carolina congressman as well, Mark Meadows. He's got a book out on that final year called The Chief's Chief. Mark Meadows, thanks so much for joining us. Appreciate it.
It's great to be with you both, and you're seeing what actually President Trump and I got to see up close and personal is Dr. Fauci having multiple opinions on the same topic, and as I outline in the book, it's really his opinion on what serves his particular narrative on that given day. And when Donald Trump did it, it was racist. Now when Joe Biden does it, and actually does it in a more haphazard way, it's prudent science, and obviously that's not the case.
Well, more haphazard way. In addition to that, we know that now, what we didn't know then, is that the travel bans don't really work, as per that MSNBC commentator's point about the South African variant being found in multiple other countries, European countries. So what exactly is it you're trying to accomplish? So then it would seem to me the question on a lot of people's minds, Trump supporters' minds, is why did you keep Fauci and Birx, for that matter, around?
Yeah, well, I think probably the biggest thing with Dr. Fauci is we've got 100% hindsight that we look backwards. I know a number of us felt like that Dr. Fauci, shouldn't keep his job. That certainly was raised with the president a number of times. We had created, or the left-wing media had created, almost a hero status for Tony Fauci with bobbleheads and everything else. And so one of the things that the president instructed me to do is to bring in Dr. Scott Atlas, which we did do, that obviously gave a very different side of things to try to have a more balanced approach as we looked at that narrative. Sadly, it's what President Trump, and I outlined this in the book, had to deal with on a regular basis. He was literally having to fight against a number of people on his own team. Dr. Fauci was one of them, actually Secretary Esper and General Milley another. I mean, and it's a sad day when candidly you're doing all you can to save lives, as President Trump was doing. And then facing within his own confines a Dr. Fauci that was trying to undermine his efforts.
Well, your book is making quite a splash right now on CNN. The headline is Trump tested positive 3 days before debate with Biden, and they're saying that they got that information from your new book that's coming out.
Well, that is in the new book, but the other part of that they leave out, and that's why it's fake news, is he also tested negative right after that. So part of the book, he did test positive on a Sunday, and for about 20 minutes, we thought that he might have COVID, and tested negative right after that. And yet, like fake news will often do, they will run with a story with only half the story. And so the president obviously came down with COVID about 4 days later, and as we see that, obviously that was well documented. That's in the book as well. But with COVID, in terms of him going through a debate, he had negative tests prior to going to the debate.
How touch and go was it for the president when he did get COVID?
It was really concerning to me as a friend of his. It was very, very concerning. I outlined some of this in the book. As he came down with COVID, he's actually physically very fit, and yet we treated him with Regeneron. The night that we got the diagnosis, we treated him with Regeneron, and he made a very quick recovery. But it was concerning personally for me on leading up to that, and I highlight that in the book as we went to Walter Reed. Obviously, that the well documented Walter Reed visit, and I think readers will be able to get a kind of behind the scenes glimpse of what went on.
You were in Congress before you were the chief of staff, so you lived and worked through other presidents. And I wonder, because the characterization of the Trump administration by that same D.C. press corps is of, chaos and rivalries. Rivalries are going to be attendant to any presidential administration, of course. But I wonder, was it as tumultuous? Was it as chaotic as is characterized by the D.C. press corps, or at least in comparison to other White Houses?
I've talked to other chiefs of staffs, and I can tell you that it was not as chaotic as many of those. The characterization that you have, the president was a business guy, got things done, did it in unbelievably quick time, and while there was rivalries, with people jockeying for position, I think that's common with every administration. President Trump was really dedicated to getting things done. And so in getting those done, it was all about having business and having a plan and making sure that we did the very best we could to stay focused. And the economy showed that he stayed focused. Obviously, Operation Warp Speed, some of the therapeutics as it related to the COVID pandemic. But it wasn't just there. It was the foreign policy, Abraham Accords, all the other things he was able to get done. It was incredibly productive. So if chaos brings that many good results, then I would like to have more of it.
Another chief of staff of his, General John Kelly, had less charitable things to say of Trump. He's on a couple of occasions, including recently. And I wonder what your perspective is on some of the tension between Trump and some of his senior people throughout his administration prior to you ascending to chief of staff, but including his former chief, John Kelly.
Yeah, so I try not to talk about other chiefs of staff because when you're in that particular job, it's only those that have been in the job that realize how difficult it is. I will say that the president was a results-oriented guy. He wanted results, and he didn't want rhetoric. And if he didn't produce results, it was a real problem. And so as he went to work through that, I think probably the biggest thing that I continue to see is that he wanted his senior staff, his cabinet, his chiefs of staff to be accountable to the American people and get things done. And the conflict that perhaps you're referring to is I outlined a little bit of that in the book. The president wanted conflict. He wanted that tension that he would do what I call creative chaos, where he'd get two people in a room with two different points of view and actually work through that. And so we'll I'll leave General Kelly's comments to himself, but I can just tell you the kind of conflict and friction that I got to see was good, and it produced results. And if not, cabinet members were asked to use their talent elsewhere.
Do you think President Trump or former President Trump will run again in 2024?
I do. I mean, right now, I think everything is designed for him to run again. I don't speak for the president, but based on my conversations with him, he's doing everything that a candidate would do in order to run again. And at this point, I expect him to be the nominee for 2024.
You think that's a good idea for the party, or is it better that he play the role of kingmaker and back somebody like a Ron DeSantis who shares a similar policy agenda?
Yeah, there's all kinds of people that suggest that he ought to be a kingmaker and not be the candidate. Really, at this point, the vast majority of the people that I talk to across the country want him to run, still desire him to run. They see Ron DeSantis as a very good candidate, but honestly, because he takes bold moves like President Trump does. And so I see that really happening. He's got overwhelming support, and with that support, I don't. If he chooses to run, no one else will be able to beat him. He will be the nominee.
What was your relationship like with Trump's family? Because obviously Don Jr., Ivanka, Jared Kushner played important roles in the administration. Was that a source of friction with you, or was that a source of collaboration?
I don't know that it was certainly wasn't friction. I don't know that it was collaboration. Obviously, I recognize that they're family members of the president, and they have the counsel that they would give the president. A chief of staff's never going to be able to interfere with that relationship because of that. I enjoyed a good relationship with all of them. We didn't necessarily share all the time the same policy priorities, but in that, I think you just recognize family will always be family. Chiefs of staffs come and go.
If Trump runs again and wins, and he says, Mark Meadows, you need to be my chief of staff again, what are you going to say?
Well, I would certainly be honored if he would do that, and be glad to help him put together people to hopefully have a good team, and certainly would be more inclined to say yes. I'm not going to get ahead of myself. Right now, it's all about making sure that we put America first and have those policies actually implemented for the American people, and I'm encouraged by it, and hopefully what we'll see is a chief of staff request that comes where I can help, and if I can be of assistance, I certainly would be glad to.
What can we expect from you before the 1-6 Commission?
I'm going to continue to honor the president's wishes as it relates to executive privilege. He's claimed executive privilege, and I'm going to continue to honor that. And yet the committee is saying that there are certain non-privileged things that they want to ask me about. What they will find out is that there's nothing that the president did. He didn't have advanced knowledge of the security breach that was happening on January 6th. He didn't delay any help that was asked for. In fact, quite the opposite. He was proactive in that. And so I think the January 6th Commission will be very disappointed in terms of any blame being put towards President Trump in their questioning of me.
He is former congressman and former White House chief of staff to President Trump, Mark Meadows. The book, The Chief's Chief, Mark Meadows, thanks so much for joining us. Good luck with the book.
All right. Thanks so much. Take care.
Yeah, thank you. And he joined us on our turnkey.pro answer line.
Connect with Dan and Amy on the AM 560 The Answer mobile app. Just text the word app to 64636 to download the app today.
Signature Bank is Chicago's fastest growing independent